Hello, one and all, and welcome to a spooky session or spirit sessions today. And we are going to have so much fun. We've pre recorded this, but we'll still be there with you when you see it. So comment, like, and subscribe, and all those things. But welcome, our family. We have a show that's amazing for you today, and I'm sure it's going to satisfy exactly what you need. But first, we have some traditions. And Rhonda, would you like to pull a card for the week for us?
Yes, since this week is going to be Halloween when you watch this show, I have pulled the Kyle Gray's Divine Masters. I'll put that up close so you can see card, and it's Lady Nada, and it's Expanded Heart, Openness, Liberation, and Let Yourself Be Loved. So there's the card. So, who doesn't love Halloween? And what a great day to open yourself to everything that's coming through. The veil becomes thinner at this time. Loved ones reach out, and you can reach back to them. There's no reason why you have to be worried about your loved ones coming and contacting you at this time of year. It's in Mexico. It's celebrated as the Day of the Dead. People go to the graveyards and have picnics and have celebration and visit all their ancestors. So open your heart, be open to signs and signals that they're just a heartbeat away from you and they're still here. So with that, I would like to introduce our special guests today, and especially Dar Harold, she says this is her first time on a show that's not Jim's. And Jim Harold is the original paranormal podcaster, and he has so many podcasts out there right now. You can go to the links are all into the video connected, but JimHarold.com. Check out his new podcasts that are released. Listen to his old ones. Join his podcasting plus site. He's like the original spooky guy and a storyteller, and he's a great voice and a really nice guy too. And we're so excited that he's here, and he always says yes. He's such a generous person, and I love his background. Something's creepy running in the back. So Jim and Dar, I wish I had a better StreamYard setup, but I'd love you to give a quick little intro about yourselves. And Dar, I'd like to hear from you. What's it like being with a paranormal podcaster for these many years?
Many years. Going soon to be 30. Well, 30 together, but 28 married. No, it's exciting. He very ambitious and very hardworking. Very hardworking. So if you're looking for him around the house, he's most likely in the spooky studio.
That's cool. The two, how is it working with your wife?
Oh, great. Dar for years had been a speech. I mean, she still technically is. I mean, she has the licenses and everything, but a speech language pathologist practicing telepractice. And what is a little over a year ago, Dar, you said, I'm kind of tired of this. And I said, well, why don't you join the spooky studio crew? And she's quite literally an employee of Jim Harold Media, and she does a great job. And the thing about her, she's so versatile, and she can do so many things so well. And the latest thing I think that we're going to talk a little bit about is I've relaunched a show I used to do called The Paranormal Report, and this time my partner on that show is my partner in life. Dar is the co-host. It's a lot of fun doing the show with her. I think she brings a different perspective. So really, it's great working with her, and she's very skilled in a number of things. She's doing great things on her Etsy shop and designing T-shirts and wreaths. She's doing editing. She's cleaning up 19 years worth of posts at JimHarold.com because we just recently overhauled every single thing. And just there's so much to do, and she's such a great helper with it. So I really appreciate her willingness to do it, even though sometimes I have this nice guy image. I like to think I'm a nice guy, but sometimes I could be a little cranky. I'll admit it. But she's doing a great job.
Aw, thank you.
That's so cute, and that's so awesome. And I love the Paranormal podcast and the new Paranormal Report. And I have to say, you've got the creepiest graphics. And I know you were talking to somebody in your podcast a couple of weeks ago. I think, and that's why we drink, girls.
Yeah, yeah.
And you're talking about the importance of titles and the importance of graphics for the podcasting world, because a lot of people choose them like they choose wine, right? They just like the label, so they
Yeah.
pull it out
No,
and
it's
pull
true.
it down off the show, and let's try this one out.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
but much more with you guys. Your soundscape, your quality of broadcast is way beyond. I mean, we're live, so it's a live show, and we don't do any sound editing, and we don't do any editing.
Right.
So it's a real live show, and bloopers and all, dogs barking, babies crying, whatever comes in. That's what's in our show. It's live, it's real, and we're real. But you guys like slick and nice and wonderful. So the paranormal podcast is different from the report. How would you say, and what have you been able to bring in extra from that?
Well, the Paranormal Podcast, which was my first show, and as far as I know, it is the longest running paranormal podcast on the internet. As far as I know, I'm willing to be corrected. I've been saying that for 2 or 3 years. Nobody has corrected me because I'm pretty sure that's accurate. There's people who did start before me, but they quit. There weren't many, but they quit. So I started in July of 2005, so early I could get that name. So that's basically a show where I interview authors and experts about the paranormal. And when I talk about paranormal, I mean ghosts, UFOs, cryptids, all of it. Kind of really big tent philosophy. The Paranormal Report is a show that I started with a co-host back around 2010, 2011, which was a weekly report on paranormal news stories. And again, same thing. It could be UFOs, it could be cryptids, it could be ghosts, whatever. And we did that for a few years. I enjoyed doing it, but just, schedules and coordinating with a co-host and those things. So we decided to let that go several years ago, I think 2016. And I was thinking about things that we could do to expand the network of shows. And I said, I miss doing that show because it keeps me up to date too, because there's always something going on. And it's a great way to be current in everything going on and to communicate that to the audience. I didn't see any other shows really doing that, at least that I was aware of. So I said, well, we've got Dar here. She's got all the equipment. We were doing a previous show, which was non-paranormal, which honestly was a nice show, but it wasn't working the way we wanted to work. So we said, well, why don't we just convert that to the Paranormal Report 3.0? And I think we've done 3 episodes so far. I mean, by the time you see this, it'll be about 6. But it's a weekly report, comes out every Monday on paranormal news. And we've covered so far everything from UFOs and UAPs to paranormal investigations to cryptids. We try to encapsulate it all. And it's just a nice 30, 40-minute recap of different news stories, and we discuss them back and forth. So really kind of even though two similar names, 2 very different concepts.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and I was wondering, how the heck do you keep up on the research? Dar, is Dar the reader here? Is you the researcher for that?
She's
show?
a great researcher. Yes.
Yeah, I love combing the internet for stories or just kind of trying to go down rabbit holes for things that I see that I'm like, ooh, this would be interesting to talk about. This is kind of current, and let's kind of go for it. So I try to do, but Jim does research too. It's kind of a good 50-50 mix. Yeah.
So do you kind of stick to what really lights your tree? Like, are you a cryptid person, or are you a UFO person, or are you like, where do your preferences lie?
I'm learning a lot about all the things paranormal because I was in the speech therapy world for so long. I didn't really have a lot of extra time to start reading more and learning more. So this was a great learning process for me being on the show. I think if I had to pick one thing, I've always been interested in like psychic ability, near-death experience, that kind of more spiritual kind of side of things. Although the last couple weeks on the show, I've been bringing creepy doll stories on.
Oh, yeah.
So
But I mean, the thing is that Dar has always had an interest in these topics. Maybe not quite as deep as I do, but she's always had interest. I'll give you an example. It's not quite paranormal, but it kind of gets into it. I think when we first met, Dar, going back to college, didn't you do a biorhythm chart for me?
1994, I got like one of the, computers are just barely, 1990. Yeah. 1990 computers are just, I think I just got my computer and I went to Micro Center and I bought the software about biorhythms. I'm like, oh, this is really cool. You get in tune with yourself and you could see how somebody else is, like, what they're made of this month and what days are going to be really good. So I ran mine, and then we had this class and we were putting a group together and I said, oh, I'm going to run Jim's, and I printed them out and brought them to class for him. So I've always been into that. I went to psychics way before I met him. That's just always been my thing. In fact, my mom did even before I was born. So I think it's kind of in the family.
And the more you dive, the deeper that rabbit hole becomes, right? Well, look
absolutely.
at Jim. How many? Yeah. That's where, and I think everybody, like Jim, your audience has learned so much from all your shows, and we go from cryptids to psychic to meditations, but we're also doing the healing modalities as well. So maybe anything we explore, it's sort of what you won't find on mainstream news.
Right.
So we talk about art therapy and sound therapy, and we talk about UFOs and cryptids and spooky stuff too. But anything that you don't find on mainstream news, anything to raise people's eyebrows, right, Teresa? It's anything that a different view of the light is what we call it. Yeah. So it's we like how you have targeted those things because everybody likes to be creeped out. Have you found a story recently, either one of you, that has kind of, besides the creepy doll, because that was creepy. I don't know. That's clowns, dolls. They're kind of in the same category for me. But
I don't remember the specifics of it, but I did have someone who called in and said that they encountered a 12-foot tall shadow person. And the shadow person was coming after them. And this was a time of life that the person was looking to get into more paranormal investigation. And after that, they thought, maybe I'll just listen to podcasts. And I could say, I would say, I'm safely here behind the mic. I would be like Don Knotts in The Ghost in Mr. Chicken.
Oh my God.
If I saw something like that, I'd be like, let me out of here. So, I mean, to be like, gee, zoink, Scoob. But it's one of those things where some people want to be in the thick of it. I think I'm more of a coward, although, I really do want to get out to some locations and maybe do some more kind of documentary type stuff about things. And we'll see in future years if that's something we can expand and do some in. But I'll leave the paranormal investigating to the paranormal investigators. Don't want to run into any 12-foot tall shadow people out there. Anything freak you out, Dar?
Everything freaks me out. No. Why I won't watch horror movies. No. Yeah, I won't. Don't like them. I don't feel like I get scared easily, but some of the stuff just really makes you think. And it's like, what is really out there that we don't really know about? And I think it's that fear sometimes of the unknown and hearing other people's stories, like when they call into Jim's campfire show, hearing their stories. Some of them, could be quite frightening. Some of them are very endearing. But I think it's that unknown and nobody really has the answers. They might think they do, but I don't think anybody has definitive answers on things.
Yeah, recently it just dawned on me. My husband and I were out walking at night. We like to do that. I like to go out at night. And we're walking towards, and I said, I think I see the northern lights. And he says, well, I can't see anything. And I said, well, it's just kind of there, just kind of hazy. So I pull up my iPhone. It has a 3-second exposure at night. So, and there they are in beautiful colors. But that's what I think the paranormal is like for a lot of us. Some people can have that 3-second exposure, whereas most of us are just seeing like shadows. And some people have a little bit and so I think it's always there. It's always around us, but only every once in a while when we get our attention drawn to it, do we give it that 3-second exposure that we can actually see it. And that can creep you out with that thought, but it's also comforting because it never bothers you. I don't know if when you look into it, do you think it looks back sometimes?
Yeah, if you stare into the abyss, sometimes it stares back. That's the old saying, I think.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, like, how open are you to it as well? Like, are you opening yourself up fully to have those experiences? Are you a little guarded? Are you a little skeptic? Are you, do you have that intuition knowing that something's there, and are you willing to accept it and be open to it? I think can be some of that too. And I think sometimes I am and sometimes I'm not. Sometimes I'm like, nope, don't bother me right now. I don't have time. No.
For real.
Yeah. I think mother's intuition is a thing. I think fathers have an intuition too, but it's a little bit harder for them to grasp it. Do you feel that way, Jim? Sometimes you just have to really tune in a little bit harder. You're kind of just focused on what you're focused.
Yeah. I mean, I can see just, my life with Dar. And I think some of it's maybe specific to moms, but some of it's very specific to her. I think she's way more tuned in than I am. I don't think one word that comes to mind for me is oblivious. So, I'm so focused. Okay, I've got to edit this podcast, which is ironically maybe about opening yourself up spiritually. And I'm worried about, okay, let's get the sound better. So, I mean, I guess what I'm saying is that sometimes I just kind of go through kind of oblivious, but Dar seems to be very, very tuned in.
I would speak to that oblivion back when we first met, and I told you I liked you in a card, but he was oblivious and had no idea. And I literally said, I like you in the card.
I figured you liked a lot of people like
no.
Like you. Not like.
Which meant really I'm interested in you.
Yes.
Yeah, I know.
But that's okay. 4 years later, and it worked out fine.
Oh, needed the baseball bat. That's okay. Sweet. Jim, this year on Campfire Stories, you've had a lot of creepy ones too. And have you got a favorite one that one of your listeners brought in? Because that's a big undertaking. Again, first you have to find them, then you have to screen them, then you have to put them on and make it all sound like a beautiful symphony.
Yeah. I mean, it really is. It sounds like a live show, but it's a particular episode might have calls from 4 or 5 different recording sessions, but we make it sound like it's one continuous thing. So it is a little bit of theater of the mind there. Well, actually, one, if I may, I will refer to my recent book, Campfire True Ghost Story 6, Volume 6, which just came out in May. I love this because there's a quote that I recently ran across, and it's very old, but I think it's very appropriate, and it fits what I think I've learned from doing these shows for 19 years. Not only is the universe stranger than we understand, it is stranger than we can understand, if that makes sense. I mean, that's a paraphrase, but the idea is that, there's a lot of stuff going on that we just don't get. So I'll read you a little bit of this. It's The Mysterious Mrs. Raspberry.
One of my favorites.
Yeah, Jennifer from Idaho wrote this, or she didn't write it, she told it on the show, and we put it in the book. So anyway, Jennifer was out strolling, with one of her little friends. She was a little kid in the early 80s, and her name was Connie. And her and Connie would go on these little adventures every day during the summer. And that was back in the day, things were a little simpler. No cell phones. You'd say goodbye to your mom for the day and maybe be gone for the day and come back for lunch or dinner. That would be it. It was just kind of the way it was. So Connie and Jennifer decided that particular day they were going to walk down to the lake, which was a couple miles down the road. So the way to get to the lake was going down some abandoned railroad tracks. Now, the important thing to remember is those railroad tracks, there was one way out and there was one way in. There was no side tracks or you could go a different way. It was a straight shot right to the lake. So anyway, they end up going down towards the lake, and they go about a mile and they see this clearing. And in the clearing are houses, older kind of A-frame style houses. There's a woman, maybe a little bit older woman in what they used to call a house dress, which used to be very common, you would see. and there's a clothesline. And they strike up a conversation with this lady, and she couldn't have been nicer. She just a very, very nice woman. And there happened to be a raspberry bush there. And the woman said, "Would you like some raspberries?" And the girl said, "Of course, we would love some raspberries." So they kind of stuck out their shirts like little baskets. Oh, yeah. And the woman plopped the berries in. And Jennifer later said probably the parents weren't so crazy about the stains on the shirts afterwards. But anyway. So they ate the raspberries. They talked with her a little bit more, and they said their goodbyes. But just a really pleasant woman, just a really nice thing. They go down to the lake. They have a great time. And then, it's the end of their time. Let's go back home. They head back down those same railroad tracks. And they get to the spot where they were before, where there was a clearing, except there's a difference. There's no clearing. There's no houses. There's no woman. There's no clothesline. There's no raspberry bush.
Oh, my God.
And they keep going. They keep going, and they go home. Again, one way out, one way in. No way to get sidetracked. So anyway, Jennifer was a smart little girl, and a week or two later, her grandma's over. She says, "Grandma, this weird thing happened to me." And she told her what happened. She said, "Are there any houses there?" She said, "Well, there were houses there in the 1920s before the railroad came in." Now, Jennifer, before she came on the show, she wanted to make sure she was buttoned up and she was remembering this correctly. So she talked as adult to her friend, Connie, and said, "I remember this. I'm going to tell you how I remember it, and you tell me if I'm wrong, because did I see this on TV? Did I imagine this? Did I dream this?" And she told her point by point by point. And as she told Connie kind of did check, 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 check. It all happened, and down to the stains on their shirt. And that's the story of the mysterious Mrs. Raspberry. And I think, what is that? Is that a ghost story? Was she a ghost? Was she a time slip? Was she another dimension? Don't ask me. I don't know.
Wild. Oh, Rhonda, you're muted.
Yeah, we've lost Rhonda. Her audio, at least.
No, I just mute when people are talking stories. Yeah, that is a head scratcher, right? That's one of those ones where, wow, it's like, weird things. And it's nice to have a witness to it who remembers the same way. So that's important. But how about you, Dar? Have you had a recent one that you liked that you can remember on your paranormal report, except for
the creepy dolls? No, we've only done the couple stories so far, like 3 episodes of the paranormal report. A lot of UFOs, and I'm learning a lot about disclosure and the people who were put in charge. So trying to think of something creepy. Jim just stole my favorite story from that book. And I helped compile the book.
Yeah, she did a great job. Helped with editing and reviewing and quality control and putting it all together.
You have 6 books right now? Or
6, yeah. The 6th one just came out. But the funny thing is, that only takes us, I think, through 2013, 2014. I still have 10 more years of stories I haven't touched.
Holy cow.
Yeah, so if I stop podcasting now, which I have no intention to do, but if I did, basically I could do at least 6 more books.
That's awesome. Have you Dar's thinking about her story. I'll give you a second to think. Have you had a guest recently that's really been one of those ones that you keep going back and thinking over certain things they said and like pondering?
Right. I'm taking a look here so I can remember, because again, it's one of those things that
you have so many.
Yeah, I've had so many. It's kind of like, ooh, who should I talk about? Because I don't want to leave anybody out. I mean, we've been so lucky and so blessed to have so many people on. I'm looking back here. Oh, I guess one of the most memorable, and it's kind of a sad note. Dar had mentioned being very interested in afterlife and near-death experiences. And honestly, that's probably the one I'm most fascinated by, just because it's the ultimate universal experience, right? I mean, we're not all going to see a Bigfoot. We're not all going to see a UFO. We might not all see a ghost. But even if we believe in an afterlife, as I do and as I know Dar does, we still have to go through that physical death thing.
Yeah, we don't get out of here alive.
Right. No matter how I struggle and strive, I'll never get out of this world alive. So said Hank Williams. But so I guess my point is that we had a gentleman on, his name Jim Willis, and he had been a reverend, I think, for 30 or 40 years. And in May, we had a family vacation. Right before the family vacation, I interviewed him on the topic of NDEs and afterlife revelations. He had a book out at that time, Near-Death Experiences, Afterlife Journeys and Revelations. And we had a great talk about it. And then I posted it when we got back home on June 4th. And then it had to be 4 or 5 days later that I learned that he passed.
Ooh.
And just the irony of the subject. And he was such a great guy. And I know he has another book that he wrote that's coming out posthumously, and certainly will have his son, I think, on one of the shows to talk about it. But it just kind of brought home the importance of those topics, and that none of us are immune to this. And he had a great perspective on it. And he told some stories that happened when he was a pastor. Now he left that life and went on, and I think kind of maybe looked at spirituality at the end of his life a little bit differently than he did at the beginning. But really it was very poignant, and just shows the importance, and plus on its own, had he lived many more years, which I wish he would have, it would have been a great conversation, regardless. But I think that's the one that sticks out over the last few months.
Wow. Amazing.
That is, and I suppose he personally had an NDE. I guess that would be what precipitated why he was so interested.
No, I don't believe he had an NDE.
Oh, okay.
If I'm remembering correctly, but he did have experiences ministering to people, and people who, he had one anecdote he told about a woman who was ready to pass. And it was very interesting. She would talk about, they came to see me today, and those kind of things. And you hear a lot of those things towards end of life. And I've always been interested in deathbed visitations and those kind of things. So just a great guest, a great guy, and he will be missed. But, much like people like Rosemary Ellen Guiley or Brad Steiger, they've left us a lot of great work to continue to draw on. So they definitely left a legacy in these kind of paranormal studies.
Dar, have you had any creepy experiences personally yourself, or some head scratchers yourself?
I've had a few things, actually. The one that I tell all the time is the one that really affected me very deeply. Was pretty much the night my mom died. It's way back. Gosh, how many years now, Jim? 24?
It was right before 9/11.
Yeah, the month before 9/11. My mom wasn't doing well, and I was over her house, and I said, I'm going to stay just to make sure she's okay. And she just kept telling me all night, go home. I'm fine. Go home. You have a little daughter. You need to get home. And I'm like, yeah, I will. And I just went to sit in the living room and whatever, but I heard her oxygen making noise. So I went to check on her, and it was out. She's like, I'm fine. Go home. Why are you still here? So I went home, and I was tired. We got Cassandra to bed. We went to bed. Jim was sleeping. I was sleeping. 2:30 in the morning, I wake up. I'm like wide awake, and I look over Jim's shoulder, and near the side of the bed, is Mother Mary. It's obviously Mary. Unlike any depiction I have ever seen, unlike any statue, but in my heart, I knew right away it was Mary. Just so absolutely beautiful and peaceful. This whole, just veil of peace just came over me, and I was just like, wow. And she was just smiling, and I'm staring at her, and I'm like, wow. And I'm awake. I'm blinking. I'm like, it's her. And then she's gone. And I'm looking around, and I'm like, she's not here. Jim's asleep. I'm like, well, I'm not going to wake him up for this. I'll tell him in the morning. But I was just like, whoa. So I laid there a while. I fell back asleep. And within an hour, my dad called and told me my mom passed. And what made it special is because my mom was very much a believer in Mary. She prayed the rosary every day. Even before she got married, she was like, I'm going to give Mary roses in May. It's her month. I mean, that's just, she was very devout and a very, very firm believer of Mary. So that just like touched me. And I saw her, and I, even to this day, I'll get goosebumps because I can see, I know what I saw. I was not asleep. She was there. So that's one of the more endearing stories, not necessarily spooky. It brought me peace.
Wow.
That's awesome. That is such a wonderful affirming that we go on, right?
Yes.
I believe in an afterlife, obviously. Similar type of experiences. Not Mary. Mary, that's pretty special, having Mary come in for visits.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was just amazing because, like I said, it wasn't like she's ever depicted, but I knew, like, in my heart, that was her. I was like, oh my God, it's Mary. That is Mary. So.
And some people might say, oh, well, you're a podcaster. This was before podcasting.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you know, oh, isn't it convenient that you've got a story? This was what,
2001.
4 years before. Well, I think it was 3 years before podcasting actually existed. And it was 4 years before I even started. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
Special though.
Oh, that's super. That's really awesome.
Thank you.
Fun.
Yeah.
Those would make you, if you see something like that 1% you always talk about, like 9 out of 10 times it can be explained, but it's that 1% that things can't be explained that make you think that there's so much possible. And what we just don't get is what we don't get. Imagine our ancestors looking at us now going, you're talking through what? You
what
see
is this
who?
thing? What is this?
What is black magic
case?
is this?
Yeah.
You know, like this goes back. I mean, I am a kid of Star Trek. I mean, the original series. And they're talking on communicators. We're going, yeah, right. Hello, communicators. Like, we still haven't got the beam up thing right, but really neither did they in Star Trek 100% of the time. But so much of what Gene Roddenberry imagined or channeled has come true. It's kind of,
you know, I have a theory about that. I mean, I think definitely there's like kind of the more materialistic people would say, well, you know, people watched that, they were inspired to develop things that were similar. And I do think there's some truth to that. But I do wonder about this. You know, I can't remember who it was. Maybe it was either Jules Verne or H.G. Wells wrote a story about a moon landing. And this was like the end of the 19th century or something like that. And there were all of these things that were very similar to the actual moon landing, like 60 some years later. I think the ship was called the Columbia. Well, the command module on Apollo 11 was called Columbia, I believe. It was launched from Florida. Well, really, it launched from Florida. And there were all of these things. There's also another famous example. There was a short story that came out, I think maybe it was either the late 1800s or early 1900s. And it talked about a shipwreck. It was called The Wreck of the Titan. And then in 1912, there was the Titanic. Same thing. Yeah. All these different facts and figures almost matched up perfectly with the Titanic. And what I'm wondering, what went on maybe with Roddenberry and some of those creators and writers in that series, or Jules Verne, or this person who wrote The Wreck of the Titan, that they tap into this collective unconscious, and this wisdom is out there, and somehow they plug into it, and they get some of that collective wisdom, and they bring it out in their creative projects. Yes. So, you know, the concept of a smartphone was maybe floating around in the collective conscious or unconscious. I always get that confused. Sometimes I'm unconscious, but you've seen me that way a few times, Dar.
Couple times.
But anyway, the point is, this like knowledge is floating around the universe, and sometimes through the creative process, we tap into it, and it comes out as a fictional account. That's just it's not an original theory, but it's a little theory that I subscribe to.
Yes, I agree.
And I think when we sleep, we don't know where we go. And sometimes we have those out-of-body experiences, or maybe we do, maybe we don't. Maybe we grab knowledge from other people. I don't know. But scientists can't explain sleep and where we go. Why should we try to figure it out, really? So anything's possible.
True.
I have a
Jim,
story.
oh, go ahead. Teresa.
Okay, I have a story about the sleeping thing. Okay, we all lived together in a house. All my children and me and my grandchildren for a little while, and then in the meantime, my son. Both of my sons were out of the house, and they had little Jake with them. Little Jake is a toddler, and they all were gone. In the meantime, I'm home, the mother's home, and we heard them all in the kitchen. We heard Jake whining and his dad opening the fridge, probably getting him something because they came home and it was hot. And then we heard nothing after that. And then so we both looked at each other. Didn't you hear them come home? I was like, well, yeah, I thought for sure I heard their voices. They were not home. The car was not there. And so they called them on the phone. Then, where are you guys at? Well, yeah, we're in town. We're picking up some lunch. And well, where's Jake? Well, he's sleeping. So my theory is that Jake was dreaming that he was at home and getting in the fridge and whining, and that we all heard him or something. I don't know.
I am shocked how many doppelganger stories like that we get on Campfire. I mean, I had been pseudo aware of doppelgangers before I started the show, but I thought more like, oh, I saw your doppelganger the other day, at the grocery store. Kind of like a joke. But it is a thing. And so many times, and sometimes it can be, that doesn't sound quite as sinister. Sometimes it can be very sinister, like something is trying to convince you that they are that loved one and they're not. We had one story on Campfire where a woman was literally in bed. It was they were on a military base, or her husband was military, and he would go out jogging every morning. But then she felt him like spooning her in the bed. And it's like, he should not be gone. And she looked, and it was like her husband, but just slightly different. And this wasn't like it wasn't a person, it was some kind of entity. And she started praying, and apparently the entity said, don't do that. And she did it long enough, and it went away. I mean, okay, you want to talk about Ghost of Mr. Chicken? I'd be like out of there so fast. I'd be like, get me out of this place. But the point is, this doppelganger thing is a thing, and it's really weird.
Yeah.
You don't know whether it's bilocation, because I've heard of people talk about bilocating, and they're here, but they're there. Oh,
yeah. Which works on the micro level in quantum physics. We just had somebody on talking about quantum physics. I asked him, could it work at the macro level? And he's a very nice guy, very intelligent. Of course, he's like, well, not really. But I still wonder if it might work on the macro level as well somehow, that we don't understand.
Yeah.
Like when we're sleeping. And we don't have to understand it. We just do it.
Yeah.
That'd be interesting. That's interesting. Cool. So Jim and Dar, tell us what's new and coming up on your podcast, because I know besides the Paranormal Report, you have another one that you've kind of restarted as well. Another podcast.
Yeah, that one really has nothing to do with the paranormal, but it's Jim Harold's Crime Scene. Actually, I made one of the biggest boneheaded mistakes in the history of podcasting. Back in 2011, I started a true crime podcast before Serial and all of these thousands of true crime podcasts. And I put it in my Plus Club. So that means that a very small amount of people got to see it. And all these other shows became big hits. And, I did over 200 episodes of that show.
Oh, my God.
So I've relaunched that, just posted the second one today. And we're going to give that a try too. Really trying to build out the network of free shows along with our paid shows. So there really is a network, and hopefully there's something for everyone. And with the True Crime Show, we don't try to glorify it in any way. It's very much like the Paranormal Podcast, where we have authors and experts. And we just want to talk about why people commit these crimes, what happened, but we don't, it's not like he twisted the knife 27 times. We don't get gruesome with
No.
it. We try to, but we definitely say this is not for kids. But we just, I re-released a show that we'd done on Israel Keyes, who was one of the most notorious and diabolical and methodical serial killers in American history. And it is,
he's the guy who did randoms, right? He just picked people at
he would do
random.
randoms. And what he would do is he would fly to cities and he would bury murder kits. And then he would come back maybe months or years later and just randomly pick somebody and kill them and use the murder kits. The one good piece of news, and I just talked to a former NCIS agent last week, and that was on the show too. And I was saying, this era of like we saw in the 60s, 70s, 80s, these serial killers going on kind of these sprees and racking up 10, 20, 30, 40, victims, just insane numbers. So with everything going on now between DNA and CCTV and smartphones and tracking capability, it seems like it'd be much harder for these serial killers to do this. And he said, particularly agencies across localities and across state lines have gotten much better with communication. So the good news is that, the heyday of the serial killer is kind of over. Not that I would never say it can't happen, but it would be much harder for someone to do this repeatedly over a number of years just because of the technology and the methodology changes. So I guess that's some good news.
It's not like the serial killer has gone away. It's just they get caught quicker.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is still scary.
It is scary.
Okay.
If you want a completely different kind of show, Jim, Cassandra has relaunched Unpleasant Dreams, our daughter.
Yeah, that's and she does, and she's very talented. And I'm not just saying that because she's my daughter. She won awards in high school for drama and studied drama as a minor in college. Actually studied a little bit in London. Was recalled back home because of COVID. But nevertheless, I said, you've got this great ability, and she has career goals. She's in the medical field. I said, as a sideline, why don't you do this? So what she does is we find stories, primarily she finds them, that are in the public domain before 1928, that are horror stories like Edgar Allan Poe and Lovecraft and things like that. And she reads them, and she does a great job. And by the time this is out, we'll have 3 or 4 new episodes of that, of Unpleasant Dreams. It's perfect for this time of year. If you like classic horror, if you're in that kind of thing, you love it, she does a great job.
Yeah,
it's a family affair around here at the Spooky Studio.
Hey, nepotism is king. And queen.
That's right.
And
Nepo
queen.
Baby.
Nepo babies.
Being my Nepo baby doesn't pay very well. But
No. But, it still pays the bills and keeps the lights on. So it's awesome that this is your career and not just your, sideline. But, Teresa and I have a lot to learn. We've only been doing this for 7 seasons, and we haven't really probably launched. But you have inspired us to maybe redo our logo for season 8 for a little bit more. We have taken on 3 more co-hosts from across the world. So
cool.
We have one in the Netherlands and some more in Tennessee and some more in North Carolina. God bless poor Nancy. She's north of Asheville, so she was up the mountain. So she hasn't got her internet back, but she's thank God she's okay. Yeah, she's safe. Her cats are safe. She does cat rescue, and it's just devastating. If it's just North Carolina, Asheville, it's just devastating what happened. What the power of water, right? It's the power of water. It's not the wind, it's the water.
Power of nature. Yeah, I
was about to say that. Yeah, and the weird thing, Asheville, which we know people in, but Asheville, they said that it was considered, what was it, a climate oasis or something? They felt that it was a safe place, and then it seems like no place is safe, even in our area, and I would not compare it to what's happened to these poor people. But there were 5 tornadoes that touched down over the summer in August, not too far from where we live. 5 tornadoes in the same day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Luckily, we had a little power outage, but I mean, my goodness, it's like a hangnail compared to what these poor people in Nashville, and many, have lost their lives. But it just goes to show there really is no safe place climate-wise these days.
And Teresa's coming from Tennessee, so you had
Oh.
terrible winds, but she wasn't in the dam zone, right? I guess the dam.
Yeah, we didn't get the winds, and there's some reason we get protected from weather here. It's weird, and it has something to do with a meteor that landed here a couple of million years ago, and it may have changed the river. And so whatever the meteor and the river do, somehow that makes all the most beautiful storms I'm waiting for go to the north or to the south of us. And it's like, oh man, I was waiting for that one. And
I'd be hiding under my bed. I hate thunderstorms. I live in Canada, and we get tornadoes occasionally, and we get bad thunders. Don't like them. I'll take snow any day over the thunderstorm. So you have crime scene. So tell us a little bit when people can find them. I know you go to your Spotify or your Apple and find them out, but you've got other ways for people to find your podcast.
Probably the easiest way to find everything we do is JimHarold.com, JimHarold.com. Right there, you can find links to the free shows. I always guide new listeners to the free stuff. There's plenty of free stuff to listen to. And if you find yourself a super fan of one of the shows, for example, I think a lot of people love the Plus Club because they can get the campfire going back to 2009, then by all means pursue that. But I really say go to JimHarold.com and get the lay of the land and listen, because there's plenty of free content to listen to. And we appreciate the opportunity to share it with your audience again.
That's awesome. And you're heavy into Canadians. Subscribe, because we listen to a lot of podcasts because it's a long way to drive between here and wherever we're going.
We get great support in Canada. Fantastic.
We measure how far it is between towns by how long it takes you. It's not kilometers or miles. It takes us half an hour. My dad would always say, but how far is it? It takes a half an hour. Doesn't matter how far it is. It takes 45 minutes. It takes an hour. Yeah, here where I live, I'm in rural Ontario. So, and Dar, what do you think is your new favorite besides the Paranormal Report?
Well, I've always loved a campfire. I try to support everything that Jim does. I think it's amazing. I think he's amazing. I don't know how he does it. If it was all up to me, it would not be at this level, because I can't do what he does. So I'm looking forward to, of course, the Paranormal Report, but the crime scene. I was able to listen and do some quality control today, and I'm looking forward to that coming back and being on the free episodes, because that was excellent. Yeah, so pretty much everything he does.
May I just interject? I couldn't do any of it without Dar, because long before she was officially on the team, she was the first person on the team, because she's the one that encouraged me to do this. When I said, hey, Dar, I want to quit my job and talk about Bigfoot and UFOs all day. She said, okay, which not a lot of people would have done that. So she's the one that deserves the kudos, and I had not have done any of it without her.
Thank you.
This is super. I'm so glad we had both of you on today. Now, coming up for Halloween, are you doing anything special?
We will be doing a live stream. Now, I don't know what day does this
The
come
26th,
out?
You said.
Yeah,
our live stream's the
but I don't know
26th.
what time
Oh,
this
there's
will
this.
be out.
Yeah.
What day will this be out?
This will be out on the 27th, so unfortunately we'll be out day before.
Well,
I may just release the podcast early, so.
Well, if you release it before, certainly the evening of the 26th, they can find it at my YouTube channel, youtube.com/ I always forget this, because some places it's got the and some places it don't. youtube.com/ JimHarold. But also, you can find a replay there. The party goes on 24/7. If you want to watch last year's Halloween live stream, it's there. It's a lot of fun. We dress up in costumes. I never divulge what I'm going to be, and Dar dresses up and Cassandra dresses up, and we have a fun-filled evening of games and
giveaways
guests and giveaways and things. So that's a big thing for us. So I hope if people, at least if they don't get to check it out beforehand, can check out that party live stream, because it is our kind of big Halloween party. Literally, we get dressed up and we get excited for it.
We do
it's
the
a big
drink
thing for us.
Cassandra and I make a spooky drink for everybody to enjoy. Last year we did a whole bunch of Halloween recipes. Those are on the YouTube channel too. Just spooky things that you could do with your family or without. I mean, could be anybody, but we have a good time. It's fun dressing up and having people, just the listeners, come on and talk for a little bit and maybe tell a campfire story or two. So yeah,
it's a lot of fun.
Very cool. Teresa, can you ask the questions today? I've been yapping too much. I know you love to listen, but still.
Okay, well, so the questions is for both of you. And I know, Jim, you probably had these before. So these are the hard ones. The first question is, what is your go-to song?
If you're asking me, I would say the go-to song, like I think you said before, if you were walking out on a stage, I would like My Way. And not that, it sounds egotistical, but I'll explain why. Not that I've done anything great, but I did do it my way. It's very kind of a unique path, especially when I started. When I worked in radio and said, I'm quitting this so I can go talk about Bigfoot and UFOs, it kind of like, oh, good luck with that. Kind of like, and again, I'm not Joe Rogan, but it's been an interesting life so far. Hopefully there's a lot more left. But I guess My Way would be my song, even though I don't mean that to be egotistical, just that I kind of said, this is the way I'm going to do it, a little bit different. I don't care. This is the way I'm going to do it.
And Dar?
This is hard. But if I had to be like, I'm going on the stage and I'm like all pumped up, it's going to be Friends in Low Places by Garth Brooks.
Okay, there we go.
Gets me going. I'm singing along. I get really, Jim knows, I get really happy with that song.
Yeah, that's awesome. Crystals. Jim, you have a couple of crystals that you like.
And I'm not good.
You have like one on your hand that you must like.
Love this one. Jim just got this a few years ago for me, so it's very special. But I do have like an affinity for my birthstone, which depends on if you call it citrine or yellow topaz. Yeah. I'm very attracted to that color and that gemstone. So when I see that, yes. Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. So that would be mine. I have to get one, maybe put it on my desk.
Yeah.
I have a couple, but I was sharing with you before, I didn't know what they were. My bad thing is I'll go to one of these fairs and I'll buy some. I'll say, which one has this property? I'll get it, and then I'll forget promptly what it is. But these are my two that I have on my desk. I have some more. I'll put it here where it'll focus a little better. But I have some more, but unfortunately, they're somewhere in a box.
Well, they're somewhere in the house. When we moved, and there's some things we haven't ever opened up
3 years later.
It's like Christmas every time you go into that store.
That's right. Exactly.
Yeah. Sweet. So you have seen a UFO, as in it's unidentified flying objects, like the U.S. pilots and.
Well, what we saw was, when was this? The 90s, Dar? We may or may not have been married, but we definitely didn't have kids.
I think we were married. We didn't have kids. We were married.
So we were driving on a major street in a major Cleveland suburb. This was a very populated street. I would say, 5 or 6 o'clock at night on a Friday, if I remember right, something like that.
I remember the day of the week, but it was dark already, so it was winter time.
A lot of traffic, and we saw...
A lot of traffic.
I think it was up over that one shopping center. We saw like a green blob in the sky of some type.
Ooh.
I thought it looked like a fireball. Is that the way you would describe it, or how would you describe it? Just
green glowing. It was just glowing, and it wasn't right. I mean, it wasn't moving fast, and it was just kind of there. Wasn't it just kind of there, and then wasn't it kind of just gone?
Yeah, and the funny thing about it is that we were listening to a popular talk radio show, and this is when still, talk radio and AM radio was still a big deal.
Yeah.
It was before
Yeah.
podcasts. And some guy calls into the place and he said, "Hey, I'm on such and such road, same road we were on, and I just saw this huge green fireball in the sky."
Wow.
And the host said, "Come on, buddy, you're getting started early." And hung up on him, and that was it.
And you didn't hear anything about this, but this was not, whatever was not normal. That was not like something you would expect to see in the sky.
Yeah.
That's in my opinion. I never thought that
I
was.
thought it was something burning up, like a meteorite or something, but I don't
But it
know.
wasn't falling.
I don't know.
Yeah,
That's your own head scratchers that you have there.
Absolutely.
So you just have to look up, and then you'll see. Most people are they could invade, and it would take about 10 or 15 minutes before anybody noticed. Just looking at our phone. Yeah. So, Dar, you told us about your extra dimensional. You saw Mother Mary.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So that's pretty cool. So I'm so glad we've had this chat and time to talk together. Any final words? I'm going to give it over to Dar first. Any final things? Is there a new episode that you're looking forward to releasing yourself? Yeah.
Actually, every episode I'm enjoying this tremendously. Anytime I get to do a podcast with Jim is fun. And I'm really looking forward to our Halloween live stream. So I hope people come and join us. And I just wanted to thank you guys for having me on. I had a great time. Thank you.
Well, I'm glad you could join us. I'm glad. We're honored that we're your first talk show besides your husband. So it's kind of a honor, a little feather in our cap. Jim, anything else new that you want to do? So Paranormal Podcast drops every week.
Every Monday.
Paranormal Report every 2 weeks or every week?
The Paranormal Podcast is on Tuesdays. Paranormal Report is on Mondays every week. Crime Seasons is on Wednesday every week. On Pleasant Dreams, Wednesday every week. Campfire, Thursday every week. Those are the free shows, not including the plus shows. So
and you take Friday off. Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, there's no days off. No.
Not only the original podcaster, OG, but also the hardest working podcaster in the planet right now. So.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. I hope I don't think I am the hardest working, maybe, but one of the harder working ones. I will say that.
Well, hopefully you'll get to take this on the road now, and you'll be able to drag Dar along, and she can, be your roadie and your co-host on the show next time. So
That'd be
good.
fun.
Sounds
a
good.
live paranormal report. Thanks so much for coming on today, and we really appreciate it. Happy Halloween, everyone!
Yes.
And I hope we'll be back. We have after this one drops, we have 4 more before our Christmas break. And then we'll be back in January with you, but 4 weeks after Halloween. So thanks so much, both of you, Jim and Dar and Jim, for joining us. And
Happy
you.
Halloween,
Yes.
everybody. Thank you, and stay spooky.
stay spooky.